Hi, everybody. Thank you very much for having me come down and speak. Frank, thank you so much for organizing tonight. This is obviously the inaugural JAMstack event, and it's awesome to be here. It's especially fun to be here speaking alongside someone like Phil, who's from a company that I only recently discovered because we're using it so much at Algolia. So I'm going to do the selling bit for you. If you haven't used Netlify yet, then I highly recommend that you check it out, because not only is it really, really quick to get up and running, but for a JAMstack feature set and as a method of deployment, it is absolutely sick. And we're using it a lot at Algolia now, particularly for that deploy preview stuff. I'm going to talk about that a little bit in a sec. So this is me. I come in black and white and bearded form. I'm Martyn Davies. I'm a senior developer advocate at Algolia. I've been with the company for just under 3 months. I joined at the start of this year. But I've been working with the platform for about a year up to that point. I first discovered it when a friend of mine went to work there and found out that it was actually very cool. So I started playing with it, and then they said, well, hey, why don't you come and do some stuff for us instead? So I said, all right then, fine. That sounds like a good idea. I'm at Martyn D on Twitter. For today, for the next day, for whenever, if you need anything, I'm there for you. My background is I've been a developer professionally for about 20 years, which I know, youthful, but I'm actually 45. I first started working very closely with developers when I started this event with some friends back in 2009, a series of music hackathons related to building new instruments, working with music APIs, working with data that we started initially in London, but it then grew to something that started happening in cities all around the world and still happens today, called Music Hack Day. It was a whole ton of fun. And this actually was my first static website that I built with Jekyll. Switched it over to that, I think, around about sort of 2011. It was the first time that I'd done it. And actually then really sort of got the taste for it and started building pretty much everything that I was doing that didn't really require any heavy lifting. And certainly at that point, really not much in the way of a CMS. Pretty much everything was done in a static site sense. The job that I had before I joined Algolia, I was running a startup accelerator in the UK called Ignite, also a static website built using Jekyll. This is powered by Contentful. So I've been playing around with this stuff for quite a long time. So actually, originally my colleague Tim was going to be coming down here to talk, but it's his anniversary this weekend. Happy anniversary, Tim. So I stepped in to do it, but it was actually quite nice because it's the first time that I've actually got to come and speak about doing stuff with static sites. But let me tell you a quick little bit about Algolia. Who's heard of Algolia before? Who's used Algolia before? Okay, good. All right. So for those of you that haven't heard of it before, Algolia is a service that provides what we call the building blocks for creating great search experiences. So not only does it give you the power to index a whole bunch of stuff, whatever it is that you need to be putting into an index and allow people to search, but we also pull together all of the elements that you might need to create the experience for your users that means that their search experience is very, very good. Now, I'm not a designer, and I'm not particularly hot on UX. You'll see that when we do the demo. But what we've built is not only the back-end infrastructure, but pretty much everything that you need to pull together all the elements that you would want to create search experiences. Now, you can do it in a very lightweight manner, which is kind of what I'm going to show you this evening. Or you can get very, very customized and very, very specific and just be hitting the API like very bare bones and build out pretty much whatever you want in that level of customization. Or you can use some more of the stuff that we give you to get you up and running very quickly, and it's kind of up to you. The level of how you integrate is very much down to the developer, the size of the company, the amount of search that they're doing, whatever it is that they want to do, there's flexibility there. We support pretty much every language framework, and as of very recently, officially now also supporting Jekyll as well. We have a couple of other implementations in the works too, but Tim has built out the Jekyll implementation, and that's one of the things that I'm going to talk to you about tonight. pretty much all of the work that we do with the SDKs, with our libraries like Instant Search, which is something that you'll see in just a little bit, is open sourced, and it's done very much kind of out in the open. We take a lot of contributions from the community. We have a lot of people contributing to the overall experience of using Algolia because they found things that work for them and they found ways that they want us to make it better. We're actually right now hiring what's called an open source software engineer, and their job is going to be just to spend all their time on GitHub doing pull requests, implementations, working with the community, basically living in that world and building out the libraries, but in a very, very open sense. So everything they do, every single piece of code that they touch is going to be very much out in the open, because we can still do stuff privately if we want, but they can't. They're going to be doing it right out in the world, just like anyone else would. It's a very cool job. We also build fun things for the community and give that stuff away. There's a very heavy engineering culture at Algolia, and a lot of the developers that work there like to scratch their own itches and create stuff that they wish was out there already. One of the things that we've put out most recently is this service called DocSearch, which very easily allows you to take documentation that you have for your services, put it into Algolia, and then add the search experience back onto the website. Now, if you've used Yarn documentation, React documentation, Jekyll, Hugo, and a ton of others, you've already used this, because they're all using it to power the search inside their documentation. And anyone can use it, anyone can get it set up. It's available as a service that we built. It's not something that we charge for beyond like the indexing. If you've got like millions and millions of pages, then sure, but it's available for people. All right, let's talk a little bit about search experience. What makes good search? Tricky question, because depending on who you ask, the response is going to be different. But for me, good search is about the relevance of the results. When you're searching for something, what is actually coming back? And how quickly am I going to get from what I'm searching for to what I'm actually looking for? How fast are the results going to actually come back to me? Am I going to see a little spinner while the site goes away and thinks about it? Okay, if it's entertaining, I'll accept it. But if it's not, then I'm going to need to see something kind of quick. Does the search bar have the ability to determine what it is that I actually want? If I kind of know what it is that I'm looking for, and I'm using words that kind of skirt around the particular element that I'm going for, is it going to be able to figure out that that's what I mean and present back to me search results that are relevant in that context? Does it have auto-suggestion? Can it react to elements of my profile? If I'm logged in and it knows things about me, can it use that to influence the search as well? Does it present a clear view of the results that come back? Or is it just a mess with stuff everywhere? Is the search going to be good? Am I going to find it but then get lost within the results page? Does it have the ability to filter on the search that I've done so I can narrow things down? So if I'm looking for jackets or sick startup hoodies, but I now want it in gray and I need it in XXL, am I going to be able to drill down? Is the search bar kind of ever present and easy to find? And that leads on to another question, and an important one for maybe some people here, is when should you actually add search? Before I joined Algolia, I didn't really think about search that much, I'll be honest. Not a lot of people do. When you're building something, particularly if it's a smaller project or something that's being built in an agency that sits on Phil's timeline and things get kind of crazy, search may not necessarily be front of mind or even top of mind. It's something that usually, for a lot of people, comes afterwards when people are like, yeah, really like what it is that you put out. Having trouble finding some things, though. Kind of rule of thumb, and again, this is sort of debatable, is that if you've got more than 200 things that people should be looking for, you should probably have search. But if you've also got category pages and semantic navigation elements that really help to drive people around what it is that you're actually putting out, whether it's an app or a site, maybe you don't. Because maybe the user experience is good enough that their wayfinding is actually going to be happening anyway, and people are going to be finding what they want. Doesn't mean you couldn't add search, but you maybe don't have to. A lot of people just don't do it because it's tough. If you approach it from the point of not actually understanding how you would do it in the first place, or you Google how to add search to my site, and then you get like solar coming up, and people are like, okay, I'm just going to leave that alone. It's intimidating, and if you don't have a lot of resource or you're working on your own, then it's something that is going to be tough to add in. That's not necessarily the case if you find a service like Algolia, because, as you'll see in a minute, you can actually add search pretty easily, relatively lightweight, and it's enough to get you up and running to a point where if you wanted to go deeper, do more customized stuff, then you could. If you just wanted to add the ability to search, then you can. Quick little tip. If you're adding search anywhere, our survey says that people are looking for search boxes in the top right of most websites. That's where people expect it to be. If it's not there, then they expect it to be slightly to the left of the top right, or slightly to the left of the top right. And if not there, then very much over on the left. But also, strangely enough, this 1 second down actually ends up being the second most popular place. Does anybody know why that's the second most popular place? It's because most of the time, this learned behavior that a lot of people have when navigating around websites is that if sites typically have left-hand navigation, there's a little search bar above the top of it. It's super common as a pattern for design. So actually, people think, yeah, top right, because that's the most common. That's where people always go. Look, that's where the eye will go. And then outside of that, actually, then they're looking on the left-hand side above any kind of left-hand navigation, or, because it still smacks of when websites very much used to be a banner at the top and navigation down the left, which is still super common today. So that's a bit of how Algolia fits into the world of JAMstack. So we've got an official plugin now for Jekyll, which is out there. It's also open source. It's available on GitHub. Tim Carey from Algolia is the main maintainer on that. He's working pretty much full-time on this now. So in terms of the level of incremental updates and the amount of stuff that's going to be changing with it, it's actually going to be pretty fast. But of course, anybody that also wants to drop issues on there or find anything about it, then that would be more than appreciated. We're also working on implementation for Gatsby. Anyone using Gatsby in the room? Yes. That's in beta at the moment. It's been built. It's available on NPM. You can install it. You can use it. It's just not official yet. It will be. We've also got community developed plugins for Hugo. And we've also got implementations that we use internally for Middleman, which is what we use for the Algolia website, which when you land on it, that is a static site. It's all built out, uses Netlify for deploy previews, and Middleman's the power behind it. Right. Okay. So when I was thinking about what I was actually going to do for this, I was like, okay, well, probably the most useful thing for people is going to be to deploy some static site stuff into an Algolia index, go through the process of actually doing that, and then implement the search experience back on the site so that you can see those results coming back in. And kind of just to show that actually, it's not a huge deal and it isn't a huge amount of work if you want to do it using some of the tools that we provide, and do it in a way that takes about 10 minutes when you're standing up in front of people and having to talk at the same time. So like super easy, okay? Because you can multitask while you do it. So let's get out of this. And let's take a little look at what we've got going on. So I've got a little Jekyll site that I built. It's not good. I'm not going to lie to you, but it's to give you an idea of what it is here. So obviously static sites can take tons of forms, and they can be used for various different things. So the most common thing that people tend to think of, and certainly tend to think of when you're thinking in the context of search, is that it's a static site and it's probably a blog of something. This isn't. This is just a site that has little mini profiles of people that I made up using a random person API, and it basically has little contact pages for each one of them. Not really much point to it, but to give you an idea, this is something that if you've worked with Jekyll, you will have seen this a lot. Markdown, front matter at the top with a bunch of different information about this particular person, and then some HTML that renders out a very simple looking page, which I can show you, with image, some kind of bio thing under there, an email button, and their name, right? Not a huge amount of stuff going on in that particular page. Those are the individual elements of it. But there's other stuff in there as well that isn't used within that particular page, but it could be. That's basically all the information that we have on this particular person. And there's 10 of these. So consider it like a staff index, a directory of some kind. There's a whole bunch of people in there. So this is the form. So you can see this is what we're working with, and obviously this is being wrapped inside a wider template when the build happens. So what we're going to do is we're going to index the information that is inside this site, and we're going to put it into Algolia. And then we're going to build the index page for this static site that's going to have the search functionality on it. And we're going to be able to search through and then navigate down through all of these different people and click through to their pages, right? Kind of simple, but it's, you know, a lightweight example using Bootstrap 4 because I have no design skill. Cool. All right, so let's go. So get rid of this. So the first thing we've got to do is get a little bit of information out of Algolia. So this is the Algolia dashboard for those of you that haven't seen it before. Inside here, you have all of your different apps. You can have as many as you want. We're working inside this one right here. Inside there, you have indexes, right? And if you consider that each index is effectively like its own database, right? Each index is where you're going to keep the records. And in this case, those records are going to be pretty much what you saw inside that markdown. So the front matter, but also the HTML elements as well. As you can see, we don't have any records in here at the moment. You can add them manually if you feel like punishing yourself. You can use the API, which is technically what we're going to be doing by using the plugin. But you can also upload JSON or CSV as well. So if you do have information that's already rendered out in that format, then you can just upload it in one go. You don't have to touch the API, and that's not really considered adding records manually. So we're going to need to grab a couple of bits of information first off. We're going to need some of the API keys. So we're going to need our application ID. We're going to configure this inside our config in just a second. But you can see here the gem file for this particular Jekyll site. Within the plugins, I've got the gem for Jekyll Algolia added in there. It has already been installed because I didn't want to go through a bundle install live on stage in front of people. So that's there. Pretend that I just did it. Now we've got to configure it here. So basic Jekyll config file, the markdown, the theme, recognizing the plugin, calling it into the instance. And then we've got a little config right here for what Algolia needs. Now, there are a bunch of other settings that you can use here. You can reference those in the documentation or on GitHub, but the most basic that you can do is just with the application ID, which is this, and the index name, which is this, Jekyll site demo. Yeah. So we can pop that in. Right, cool. That's that set up, done. So next, we need to actually push what is in all of those markdown files over to Algolia so we can start to work with it. For that, you need a different API key. So you have a couple of different ones in here, and I'll explain them. So the search-only API key is what's used in anything that you're doing that's public-facing. anything that calls the records back out from Algolia, anything that is using the JavaScript libraries, anything that people can look at, use the search only API key. The one that's hidden is hidden for a reason and shouldn't be used in anything public facing. But the admin API key is also what you need in order to write to your index as well. So in this instance, that's the one that we need. So we can, from this little thing here, this is the command that we're going to need to run next. So let's pop that in there. Now, obviously, you can. Oh, yeah, thank you. There we go. So what you can do with this, obviously, this is all going to run as just like one command right now, but you could have this as an environment variable if you want to. Given that you would probably be running this through some kind of build script before you deployed it, if you were doing this normally, you would have that in there as an environment variable, and the bundle exec Jekyll Algolia would be part of that as you built it out. But we're just going to do it straight away in here. Oh, this is the bit where it's like, you've got to hope that this works. I have a backup if it doesn't. All right. Cool. So this is what happened. Basically, the plugin built the site, pulled out all of the elements that it needed, pushed it up to Algolia. There wasn't anything in the index to start with, so there were no records to delete. Nothing has, at the moment, been changed. So it added 11 records in there, which is basically the 11 bits of Markdown that have already been written, and all of the front matter. So let's see how it turned out inside Algolia. So you can see that the page is now changed. We can dig through the data, start actually searching with it like you would in the normal search experience. But you can see all of the attributes that that feature in here. So we've got some of the front matter, some elements that we can add and customize, like rankings and elements like that. But we've got the permalinks, we have image, the website, phone number, email, their little bio, their username, permalinks, and also the HTML that gets rendered out for that as well. Now, one of the things that you can specify when you do the settings in here is you can actually say, look, exclude these files, include these files, don't index this, do index that. When you're pushing stuff into the index, here are the nodes within the HTML that I think you should be looking at. So you can actually be specific about the stuff that is in there. So if, for instance, we only wanted to pull through like this particular p tag here, then we could specify that it should only be looking for a paragraph tag in there. And you can dig quite deep on that as well. But the default is just looking for p tags. So when you don't include anything at all in here, it just pulls in the p, whatever that equates to, which is you can see in the HTML there. That's what it popped in there. Yep, all the front matter, which is all of this in here. So you've got basically the ability to search through how it would be rendered, or the elements that are rendered out, as well as the stuff that's in the front matter. And you can actually, you can tell it not to do that too, if you don't want that. So if you just wanted to have the front matter, then you can just have the front matter. So we've got all of our different records that are in here now, and that's it. So I could end there and go, congratulations, you've pushed stuff from a static site into Algolia, great. But like that's fine, but now all you have is data in an index. It's not particularly useful to anyone right now. But you know, if you kept it at this point, if you were feeling like you really wanted to get super deep, then you could wrap the API for this and build your own API for whatever it was that you just indexed. I don't know why you would, but you could do that. You've effectively got access to everything that is within that site available at the end of API calls now. So you can start playing with it in some pretty creative ways. What we're going to do next, though, is add some of the search experience back onto the site. So you can see here, right now, the people persons directory is looking pretty bare. There's not a whole lot of stuff going on here. This is not a good search experience. If you landed on this page, you would not be lasting for a particularly long time. I'm going to go ahead and say that the bounce rate for this site right now is pretty high. So let's add some stuff in that actually allows us to dig through some of those people. And what I'm going to use to do that is one of our, I guess you could call quick start libraries that we provide, which is called Instant Search, which is pure JavaScript and effectively allows you to add elements of a search experience in a sort of customizable but widget-based way. So you can plug in different elements very, very quickly and very, very easily. So we don't need that now. We don't need this. This is my little backup file that I have, demobits.nothing, which has the stuff that I maybe need to paste in here if I forget what it is. Also, here's the other backup, index that works, just in case. So we're going to be working in here. This is the template that we've got set up for that particular index page. So, you know, it's super basic HTML. You can see the H1 that I've just shown you on the screen, right there. And this is where the content's getting merged in for that particular thing. The actual index markdown is very, very simple. We've just defined a div with an ID of people-hits. And this is where our search results are actually going to appear. So let's start plugging some Algolia into this mix. So to start us off, when using instant search, we've got these libraries which are on CDNs. You can just paste them straight in, directly out of the documentation. And this contains everything that you need and all of the widgets, pretty much anything you would want to build around any kind of search experience is in there. So as long as you have these, you can work with any of the elements that we have available. So that we need to add a couple of things in here to get ourselves going. So we need the app ID, API key, and the index name, which we can get right out of here. So this is the index name we want to work with. Paste that in. Go to API keys now. So we're going to be working on the front end now. So the search only API key is perfectly fine for this. And then our app ID is this. Now the app IDs that are created are just like random letters and numbers that get pulled together, but you can customize this as well. So if you needed something that was a little bit more memorable than CJFOM1IQCB, you can actually call it, you know, whatever it is that you want, because at a certain point, this list in this drop-down can get kind of long if you're using a lot of different indexes. So don't think it's something that we force upon you. It isn't. Okay, so we've got the search set up. We're calling an instance of instant search right here. And you see down at the bottom here, one of the things that I left in here, because I always forget to include it, is search.start. Without that, nothing is going to happen. And trust me, I have stood in front of people before, wondering why stuff isn't working, and this is always, always the cause. But right now, that's really not going to do a whole bunch, right? We've got an instance, but still nothing else in there. So we should probably add search into this mix. Let's make it so that we've got an actual search box. Now, this is the documentation, like the dig deep documentation for instant search. Now, you can use instant search in a very customized way if you want to, but if you just want to get up and running quickly, then we provide a whole bunch of widgets that allow you to do that. One of them is a widget for a search box. So let's grab this and put it in and see what we get. Okay. So we're entering search and add widget, and then we're going to call the search box widget on here. So we need a container, which is where the search bar is actually going to live on this site, and that actually exists up here. So we've got an ID in a div of search box, and that's where we want it to live. So rather than Q, we want that. We're not going to search for products in this instance. We're going to search for people. Autofocus, I don't know, don't really care. Don't really care about that. And powered by true is something that we add in that will place a little powered by Algolia logo underneath it, because if you're using the community plan, which is 10,000 records for free, it's required that you have that. Now, you can obviously turn it off if you're using something else. You don't even have to include this here if you don't want to, but I'll leave it in. All right, so let's take a look at what we have. Cool. So now we can search for people, and our search is powered by Algolia. Woo! This is great. But you can do this, nothing's going to happen. We've got a person in the directory called Dennis, but nothing's going to happen. So we need to actually start displaying the results back and actually show people what they're searching for. And we've got a widget for that as well. The hits widget is effectively the most powerful of all of the elements inside instant search. And it's the piece that displays back what it is that people are searching for and the results that are coming back from the index. Now, it's very customizable in terms of the actual template that you use. You can do highlighting of the elements, so if there is something that people are searching for and you really want to direct their eye onto that piece within the actual results, then you can do that as well. So let's grab this bit and we'll add it in. Okay. So now we need to say where this is going to live as well. So you see in here, we've got people hits, which is where our search results are actually going to be. So let's change it out from hits container, put that there. And we're going to do this slightly differently. You can call your templated results inline like this if you want to, but I actually prefer to do it rather than do it as a string, to do it as a function instead, because it gives you just a little bit more power over what it is that comes back. So if I pass it in like this, then this is what we're defining at the moment as what comes back if there's no search results, right? What happens on screen if there isn't anything there? So we'll use a template string for this. Sorry, there were no results. Now, one of the things I will say is that although I'm putting in here, sorry, there were no results, it's actually a bad thing to say that to people. You may not have any results, but if you can say that and also give them something else to do, suggested content or anything else, then you're actually creating a better search experience overall, something that people will value and appreciate. And we actually have something within Algolia that is really handy for doing that called query suggestions, which you can define as if people are getting down here but we don't have that, then you can say suggest this stuff instead. That is a whole other talk in itself, but play with it if you do get the opportunity. So let's just say, sorry, there were no results for query. And close that out. Okay, so now if we don't have any results, at least we've got something going on. So let's next define what's going to happen when we do have some results. Now again, we'll do it as a function. Now, in this particular one, what data is the individual object that's coming back from the index for the match of whatever it was that you were searching for. Now, that can either be, it'll either be an array that then gets passed down, or it'll be a single record if it's a really exact match. And everything within it is contained here. So now this is actually pretty long because there's a template that goes along with it. So rather than you sit through me typing all of that out, I'm just going to pull it out of here. So we'll return this. Okay, and just tidy that up a little bit, and then I'll talk you through this bit too. Okay. So this is, again, returning a template string because we want to use a little bit more HTML in here as well, but I guess, you know, kind of self-explanatory as to what's happening in here. You can see that we're calling the variables that are coming back from the data object that we're getting passed back. We've got elements called image, real name, loves, and permalink that we're going to use within that particular template. This next piece here, hits per page, is an optional element. I'm going to take it out, but one of the things that this allows you to do is if you're working with a small area, or particularly this is handy for doing stuff when you're working in a mobile environment, if you want to limit the amount of results that can be displayed at any one point before pagination kicks in, then you can specify that here. We've only got 11 records, and we've got a pretty big window to work with, so we're just going to take it out, and we'll carry on from there. So what for, if you don't specify it, then it's just everything. Yeah. Now, obviously, when you've only got 11 records that are going to come back, that's fine. If you've got 14,000, then You probably wouldn't do it that way. What you would then want to do is specify hits per page, but then also consider using, if you're doing instant search, using the pagination widget as well, which will automatically break it down, add in the pagination for it, so you don't have to go through and actually code that element yourself. We also have another thing that references hits, which is called infinite hits, which basically allows you to specify a limit in there, and if you scroll, it just loads more in. So if you do have 14,000 things, and you did want to have somebody scroll through a page of 14,000 things, you could, but they wouldn't have to load it all at once. It would just load in as they scrolled down. So, you know, it's fun. I mean, look, we're not going to get a chance to go through all of this stuff this evening, but dig in on some of this stuff, because once you start playing like with all of these different widgets that are available, it's really kind of fun, the kinds of combinations that you can pull together. So there you go. Right now, we've got search. The default for presentation is always going to be, here is everything. So as a landing page, this is already better. Still doesn't look great, but it's got more information on it than it did before. So you can see all of the people that we pushed into the index from all those markdown files now being returned and displayed on this page. And then we can drill down. So say we want to filter on, you know, some things like Dennis. Then we can do it, but we can't. And that's because there's some extra elements of customization that there are two ways to do that you need to do before you can do this. So I'm going to show you how to do this in the dashboard, but you can pass all of this over in the JavaScript as well. So you don't have to go in and touch the settings in here at all, really. Beyond getting the API keys, you can push data in here and leave this alone. All of the settings that I'm about to set up inside here, you can also do just by passing over arrays within the setup options for instant search. So you can have this match up however you like. But for visual purposes, we're going to do it here. So you have a couple of elements here. Faceting, which allows you, if you're going to be using some of the widgets to drill down in certain elements, you've got the ones that you can in here. Now, we don't really have those, so these are all searchable, but we don't really need it, so we're going to leave this alone. The attributes to retrieve is the bit that we want to look at. Now, by default, it's just going to pull back everything, but we don't necessarily need all that stuff. So let's just grab the bits that we do need. So we need an image, we need their loves, we need the permalink, we need their real name. Okay, and then we save that. And now, when we make the calls over to the API, when we load the page, it's only going to pull back objects that contain that stuff, which means that in this instance, we don't have huge objects for everybody, but the limit is 10K per object, but you can actually put quite a lot of stuff in 10K. You may not necessarily need to return all of that for the particular experience that you're trying to design. So in this instance, we only need these things, so that's all we're going to say that we want to have come back. This, again, if you're doing highlighting to drive people's eyes around the search experience a little bit, then you can say which elements are highlightable and which aren't. So if you've also got text and you have other things that relate to what is they're searching for, you can highlight those elements and say, okay, well, look, this is what you wanted. Okay, so that's saved. Just check that everything is set the way it's supposed to be. Yes. Okay. So one of the things that we can also do here with the faceting, if we get rid of these, is just to show you some of the things that you can drill down on. If I put in real name and make that searchable, when I go back to browse, you'll also see now that we've got this faceted list of everything in here. Now these are just people's names, but if it was items in a store or anything like that, and you had multiple different elements of it, you would start to see which elements within the overall index relate to here and how many instances of that you got up in here. This is pretty similar to what you would get presented if you use the faceting widget in there as well, to allow people to drill down. So if we only want to see stuff that related to Chelsea Dietrich, then we would just click on that. And you can kind of, within the dashboard, experiment a little bit with how it's all going to come together when you actually put it into the site itself. So let's give that a refresh. Okay, now this is always the thing. I've done something differently, and I can't think of what it is, so I may have to just reference my index that works real quick to try to figure out what that is. No, it looks kind of the same to me. Okay, bear with me. No, probably not going to figure it out. Hang on. Aha. There we go. Right. The searchable attributes. Of course, that would make the most sense. Like, what is it that you actually want people to be able to search for in a list? So this is where you actually would set that up. So look, taking a look at this and looking at what it is, most likely people are going to be searching for the name of person. If this is a directory, people are going to go in here and want to drill down. So say this isn't 11 and it is like 14,000 different people, staff members or whatever. First name, last name, that's probably what people are going to want to search for here. So let's set that up and add that in. So we'll use real name. Ordered, sure, we can do it, or unordered. You can specify how that order comes together, whether it's alphabetical, by some kind of ID. You can dig into the customization of this much more if you want to. It doesn't really matter to us at the moment. We'll do it ordered, so the first thing that comes back, and then it's going to rank it in alphabetical order after that. So if we save this, now, hopefully, say for instance I'm looking for Dennis Cho. There we go. And you can see as you type, the search drills down. Stuff that's matching against D within the first name. In this particular instance, we've got 3 things back there. Get rid of it all. We get back to the results as they stand. We had Chelsea before, so we can pull her up as well. And then we're pulling in the stuff directly from the index itself, and that's what's populating this. That is this here, this card. So this information is what we're getting back from there. Oh, you know what? There's one other element that I forgot to say we need. Which is username. So we grab that too. There we go. So that's how we have this all come together. Now we've got drilling down. So for instance, let's say, yeah, okay, Dennis, cool, found Dennis, excellent. Let's go check out his profile. Click through, do that, send him an email, tell him how great he is, congratulate him on a job well done. And that's it. So we've gone from having a static site that didn't look very good to being able to index the stuff that's inside it, set up faceting, set up searchability, a little bit of ranking, add the search bar in there, add the results in there. And, you know, really, it's, I don't know, 40-ish lines of code, depending on how big you want your template to be. But it's already significantly better than it was, and it really hasn't taken a huge amount of time to do. That's like the most basic thing that you can do with Algolia and with instant search. The widgets are extensive, they are good, they're also very customizable, and you can build on top of them as well if you want to. So if you find that there is a widget that does sort of what it is that you want, but you want to make it so that it does exactly what you want, you can do that. They're all customizable. We have this theme of connectors within there, so you can build out widgets on top of widgets if you want to. And there is an API for instant search allows you to build your own widgets as well. So if you're building very often the same kind of thing, and we don't have a widget for it, but you build one, and you've got clients or customers that need that same experience every time, then you can just do it as a widget, and you can drop it in exactly the same way as we do with this. Right, that's it. That is the demo portion. Thank you for bearing with me while I remembered that I needed to turn things on. So I'm just going to skip back to slides for a second, and then we'll finish up. So, oh, you know what? Yeah, I was supposed to have that on when I talked about what I just talked about. So that's the instant search logo. That's what you're looking for. This is the vanilla flavor of it that I used tonight. So like bare bones JavaScript, but if you're using front-end frameworks like Vue, React, Angular, we have versions of instant search for all of this. And it works in much the same way, but just with some more specificities and different ways of building out customized widgets, if that's what you want. But overall, that's the process of taking Jekyll, take a site, take the markdown, push it in, make it searchable, present it back in a way that, yep, definitely doesn't look good because my design skills suck, but it's fast and it works particularly well. So if you've got questions, feel free to talk to me afterwards if you don't feel like raising your hand right now. Otherwise, merci. You're very welcome. Thank you.